Daniel Cutter had spent most of his life working in forests, guiding lost hikers, tracking elk migrations, and helping logging crews find safe trails. He loved the wilderness because it was honest. Storms did not pretend to be anything other than dangerous, and wolves never lied. So when he received a formal employment letter from a private biological research company, he assumed they needed someone with his experience to help monitor mountain wildlife. The job description was vague, mentioning only observation duty, security support, and a confidentiality agreement. What caught his attention was the salary. For 1 month of work, he would earn enough money to repair his leaking roof, replace his truck's transmission, and still keep the bank from taking his land. 2 days later, a helicopter landed near his cabin. A man in a gray coat introduced himself as Carter Beck. He was pale, formal, and spoke like someone accustomed to government meetings and polished academic presentations. Beck said their organization had captured a rare creature deep in Washington's wilderness and established a temporary facility to protect it from hunters and publicity. He never used the word animal. He always called it subject. Daniel asked, half-jokingly, whether they had found a new species of mountain gorilla. Beck responded with a smile that revealed nothing. It is best you see for yourself. The helicopter carried Daniel over miles of thick forest, winding rivers and distant snow-capped ridges. When they reached a remote outpost, Daniel saw 2 insulated cabins, several generators, motion sensors, and one massive, barn-like building reinforced with steel beams and heavy wooden planks. The entire compound felt hidden and heavily defended, like something built to withstand both wilderness weather and unwelcome visitors. Beck briefed him on daily duties. Daniel would deliver food and water, record behavioral observations, and remain on site at all hours. The creature was highly intelligent, impressive in size, and currently pregnant. That last detail shocked Daniel. Inside the barn was a reinforced internal cage. Daniel heard slow, rhythmic breathing long before he set eyes on anything. It sounded tired, not aggressive. The structure smelled of damp wood, clean hay, and an unfamiliar musky scent. A dim light illuminated the interior. Daniel froze when a pair of amber eyes appeared between the bars. At first, he thought they belonged to a man in a fur coat, until the figure stepped forward. The creature stood nearly 8 feet tall, covered in thick brown-silver hair, with long arms and surprisingly delicate hands. Its posture was upright, and its eyes were expressive, filled with exhaustion and wariness. Daniel's first instinct was awe rather than fear. He had heard stories told around campfires, stories about a tall forest being that avoided humans, walked softly, and understood more than anyone expected. But witnessing one alive was beyond anything stories prepared him for. This was not a mindless beast. Its gaze tracked his every movement with heavy intelligence. A tray of vegetables, berries, and boiled beans rested nearby. Daniel placed a tray near the bars and spoke softly, unsure whether it would understand him. "I'm not here to harm you. I'll be around for a while." The creature did not approach immediately. Instead, it observed, head tilted, as if measuring Daniel's tone and intentions. After several minutes, it extended one hand and picked up a carrot with careful precision. Daniel noticed its swollen abdomen and felt immediate discomfort. Pregnancy was a vulnerable condition for any creature, and isolation inside a cage felt unnatural and cruel. However, Beck insisted the captivity was necessary. Public discovery would invite chaos. Poachers, news crews, conspiracy hunters, and opportunistic scientists. According to Beck, secrecy was the safest option. That night, Daniel could not sleep. He sat outside beneath towering cedars and listened to soft crying inside the barn. The sound carried pain, not violence. It reminded him of a grieving mother mourning something beyond his imagination. He wondered whether she had been separated from a companion or entire community. The idea left a hollow ache in his chest. Each morning he brought fresh water, cleaned the food tray, and spoke to the creature even when he doubted it understood. He refused to call her Subject Delta. She deserved more respect than a laboratory number. When she ate, she glanced at Daniel repeatedly, assessing him like a cautious neighbor. The more time he spent near her, the more he sensed personality, curiosity, sadness, and moments of shy acceptance. The other researchers worked efficiently, but without emotional attachment. They treated her as a rare biological opportunity, not a sentient forest elder. Daniel felt increasingly protective. Nothing about her presence suggested hostility. She seemed frightened, tired, and profoundly alone. The forest outside was alive with deer, winds, and night birds. Keeping such a creature behind steel felt like keeping a mountain behind a fence. On his 15th night, Daniel's resolve changed. He whispered through the bars, I don't know who decided to trap you, but I promise I will treat you as gently as I can. For the first time, she leaned closer, studying his face with solemn concentration, as if memorizing it. Daniel felt the moment was sacred, fragile, like meeting a guardian of the old world. The forest seemed to breathe with him, as if recognizing two unlikely companions sharing a quiet promise beneath trees. Daniel settled into a steady routine during his first 3 weeks at the outpost. Each dawn, he walked from his cabin to the barn, carrying fresh buckets of water and trays of fruits, grains, and boiled vegetables. Although the pregnant Bigfoot rarely approached immediately, she never rejected food. She ate with quiet dignity, seated upright like a thoughtful matriarch. Her hands fascinated Daniel. They were broad, strong, and clearly adapted for climbing, yet each grasp was careful, almost polite. No part of her behavior reminded him of a caged animal. If anything, she behaved as if she tolerated captivity only because she had no strength to resist. Daniel learned to speak aloud while he worked, mostly to keep her company. He shared small stories from his past, guiding trips through Montana valleys, repairing old fences on his family's land, learning bird calls from his father, or losing his closest friend to a winter avalanche. He did not expect the creature to understand, yet she listened with complete attention. Whenever Daniel paused, she blinked slowly as though inviting him to continue. On the 10th evening of their companionship, Daniel played a small wooden harmonica while sitting near the cage. The melancholy tune drifted through the barn, soft as snowfall. To his surprise, the Bigfoot reacted immediately. She leaned closer and made a deep humming sound, low and steady, matching the rhythm. The sound vibrated through the barn walls like a warm echo from an ancient choir. Daniel stopped playing, stunned. The humming continued gently, not as mimicry but as soulful response. It felt like music shared between two worlds. Over the next days, Daniel sensed something deeper emerging. She began responding to his gestures. When he pointed at his own chest and said, "Daniel," she tapped her own chest softly. He tried repeating the gesture, and she repeated hers. He asked, "You have a name?" She blinked solemnly, but no sound came. Whether she possessed a spoken language of her own or relied on gestures, he could not tell. One morning, Daniel brought a sketch pad and a charcoal pencil. He drew a small cabin, a pine tree, and a human figure with a beard. The Bigfoot watched with intensity. When he pushed the pad closer, she reached through the bars, not grabbing it, but tracing the tree outline with one long finger. Her fingertips smudged the charcoal like someone familiar with drawing. Daniel whispered, almost reverently, "You understand? Pictures." She lifted her gaze and tapped her head twice with a gentle thump. The message felt unmistakable. "I think." Daniel gained permission from Beck to remain inside the barn during storms, so it could ensure comfort and steady monitoring. The real reason was simpler. Daniel did not like the idea of her being alone, while thunder cracked across the wilderness. During one powerful storm, lightning illuminated the rafters, rain hammered the roof, and wind howled like distant spirits. The Bigfoot wrapped her arms around her belly protectively. Daniel sat near the bars and murmured reassuringly, describing every storm as temporary. She breathed unevenly, almost shivering. He reached one hand through the bars, palm up, offering trust rather than touch. After several minutes, she extended her hand, enormous and warm, resting it lightly against his. It was the first physical contact between them. Her palm trembled like she carried sorrow larger than weather. Their bond grew stronger with each passing day. Daniel began teaching her small English words through pointing, repetition, and simple sentences. "Food," he said, pointing at the tray. "Water." He pointed at the bucket. "Safe." He placed one hand over his heart and repeated gently. She would echo the cadence through quiet grunts and gestures. Whether she understood the full meaning or only the emotional tone, Daniel could not be sure. But understanding grew, slowly, steadily, respectfully. One evening, he brought a recording device and played soft classical music. The Bigfoot closed her eyes and swayed side to side, humming again with calm resonance. Daniel recorded the moment only in his journal, refusing to take pictures. He felt honored rather than scientific. She was not material to be cataloged. She was someone's ancestor, someone's storyteller, someone who had lived far longer than any man in that facility. It was on the 29th day that Daniel finally learned a secret neither Beck nor the research team had shared. The Bigfoot tapped her belly repeatedly, then pointed toward the forest. Daniel said slowly, "Your family?" She blinked once. He asked, "Your tribe?" She blinked again and tapped her forehead, then her chest, then the trees. The sequence felt like, "My people are out there." Daniel's heart tightened. "Were you taken from them?" She lowered her head and released a low, mournful moan. Daniel clenched his fists. Capturing a pregnant female was horrifying enough, but separating her from a tribe felt unforgivable. She then surprised him again. She pointed at her abdomen and then made a cradling gesture, like rocking a baby. Her brow furrowed, and she tapped the cage bars with one heavy knuckle. She repeated the gesture several times, slow, sorrowful, insistent. Daniel whispered, "They plan to take your baby?" The Bigfoot closed her eyes and let out a trembling exhale. It was the first unmistakable sign of fear Daniel had ever seen from her. Daniel wrote in his journal late into the night, "She knows they intend to separate her from the infant. She understands captivity. She understands intention. She pleads without words." For the first time since arriving, Daniel felt ashamed of his role. Daniel awoke before dawn on his 37th day at the outpost, stirred by the same low humming he had come to recognize as the Bigfoot's comfort song. But this morning, the tone sounded strained, uneven, as though she struggled to control it. When he hurried into the barn, carrying fresh water and grains, he saw immediately that something had changed. The pregnant Bigfoot lay on her side, breathing in sharp, rhythmic bursts. Her hands gripped the straw bedding muscles tight, expression contorted in unmistakable pain. Daniel's heart leapt in panic. "You're in labor," he whispered, even though she already knew. He rushed to the radio to call Beck. Beck answered calmly, asking only for vital observations. Frequency of contractions, condition of breathing, posture, and vocal distress. Daniel wanted to snap that she was not livestock to be measured, but he forced himself to report relevant details. Beck arrived within the hour, accompanied by 2 researchers and a medic carrying tranquilizers, restraints, and portable oxygen tanks. Their expressions were clinical, not compassionate. They spoke in quiet scientific tones about stress thresholds, fetal survival rates, tissue sampling opportunities, and placenta preservation. Daniel listened with disgust. The mother was not an experiment. She was terrified. The contractions intensified by midday. The Bigfoot sat upright, bracing her back against a reinforced wall, arms wrapped protectively over her abdomen. Her massive shoulders trembled with each wave of pain. Daniel knelt just outside the bars, speaking softly. "I'm here. You're not alone." She reached toward him blindly, her hand finding his as if needing an anchor. The moment shattered Daniel's last thread of emotional detachment. He had never assisted a human birth, let alone the birth of a forest elder. But the creature trusted him, not the scientists circling like vultures. Hours passed. The air inside the barn grew humid and warm with the scent of sweat, hay, and primal struggle. Every time the Bigfoot cried out, the call echoed like something ancient and heartbreaking, as if every mother of her species was speaking through her. Daniel remained by the bars, giving comfort through soft voice and steady presence. He sang a simple melody, the same one he used on his harmonica. She hummed back between contractions, her voice unsteady but determined. It was music shared through pain, defiance, and dignity. By late afternoon, the birth reached its final stage. The researchers watched with unblinking fascination, scribbling notes. Daniel had stopped writing in his journal entirely. He focused only on her breathing. When the final contraction came, the Bigfoot roared, not in violence, but in fierce, primal triumph. The infant slipped into the straw, small, wet, and trembling. Its fur was lighter, almost copper-colored, and its limbs were delicate, clinging instinctively to the warmth of his mother. Daniel felt tears burn his eyes. The mother immediately pulled the newborn close, bathing it with raspy breaths and low coos. She rocked gently, cradling the infant with reverence. It was not like watching an animal birth. It was watching family. The newborn reached for her, tiny fingers curling into her chest fur. Daniel whispered, voice cracking, "He's beautiful." The Bigfoot looked at him with shining eyes, exhaustion etched deep across her face. She tapped her chest, then lifted the baby's tiny hand, repeating the gesture. Daniel understood. My child. The intimacy of that moment did not last. Beck stepped forward, voice sharp. Prepare sedation protocol. We need the infant for immediate examination. Daniel's blood ran cold. No, he snapped without thinking. She just gave birth. Let them rest. Beck barely glanced at him. We cannot delay. The longer we wait, the harder sedation becomes. We need both subjects separated safely before transport. Daniel stared in disbelief. Separated? She'll panic. She knows what you're doing. Look at her. The Bigfoot clutched her infant tightly, pressing it to her chest with a rumbling growl. Her eyes widened with terror. She had suffered captivity with endurance, but this, losing her child, was unbearable. Daniel stood abruptly between the cage and the medic. You have no right. Beck's eyes hardened. Step aside. We are preserving history and saving a species. Daniel shouted. You are torturing a mother. The medic raised a dart gun. The Bigfoot hissed defensively, shielding the infant. Daniel felt rage burn through him. Without thinking, he slammed the dart gun aside. The medic stumbled. Beck ordered security protocol, calling for armed personnel from the secondary cabin. Daniel backed away from the cage and whispered urgently to the Bigfoot. I won't let them take him. Her breathing steadied, eyes fixed on Daniel with desperate hope. He felt the gravity of it. She trusted him more than any human she had ever known. As search teams mobilized outside, Daniel realized the only possibility was escape. Not tomorrow, not next week. Tonight, he waited until dusk, when the researchers retreated to the cabins for data review and equipment calibration. Security would be tighter after the newborn's arrival, but for a short window they were distracted, celebrating the historic capture over radio calls. Beck was already arranging transportation to a private laboratory. Daniel approached the cage quietly with a crowbar he had hidden beneath tools earlier in the week. The Bigfoot watched him intently, clutching her sleeping infant. Daniel whispered, When I open this, follow me slowly and silently. If you hear footsteps, hide behind me. I know the ridges. I know the rivers. I can get you out. He wedged the crowbar under one hinge bolt where rain had rusted the iron. Metal cracked loudly. Daniel froze. No footsteps approached. The Bigfoot remained motionless, trusting him completely. One more pull freed the hinge. The door shifted. Daniel pried the lower lock, pulse hammering, each second sharpening into the most dangerous moment of his life. Tonight, he would commit treason against his employers. Tonight, he would become the only human a Bigfoot ever counted as family. The final lock gave way with a soft metallic snap. For the first time in weeks, the pregnant Bigfoot, now a mother, was free to step beyond the bars. She hesitated at the threshold, clutching her newborn against her chest, nostrils flaring as if tasting freedom and danger all at once. Daniel held his breath. He listened for footsteps, engines, or radio chatter. Silence stretched like a blessing and a warning. Come with me, he whispered. The Bigfoot dipped her head and stepped outside the cage. Her gait was unsteady. Exhaustion from childbirth weighed on every muscle, but she moved with purpose. Daniel led her toward the rear exit, the one used for fire emergencies and supply deliveries. He had measured the door's hinge length for days, memorizing weak screws and blind security spots. Forest darkness waited behind it, immense and protective. When he forced the back door open, a gust of cold night air swept through the barn. For the first time since captivity, the mother inhaled wilderness. Her shoulders shuddered with relief. She pressed the infant closer, crooning in a quiet, melodic hum that Daniel recognized as gratitude and reassurance. Then headlights flared on the cabin porch. Daniel froze. Beck and 2 researchers were stepping outside, radios glowing, coffee mugs in hand. No immediate alarm, just routine activity. But if they checked the barn or ran a standard security sweep, everything would be over. Daniel motioned quickly. Stay low, follow close. The Bigfoot crouched and padded behind him without sound, moving with surprising stealth for her size. The newborn slept peacefully, nestled into thick fur, untouched by fear. They slipped past the generator building and across the gravel lot toward the tree line. Daniel knew security cameras faced the front entrance, not the rear drainage ditch, an oversight caused by complacency. Rainwater trickled through the ditch like a whisper. They slid into it, crawling beneath fern shadows while the compound remained distracted. Once inside the western tree belt, Daniel exhaled. The forest belonged to them now. They moved deeper beneath towering cedars. Each step felt miraculous and unnerving. Daniel had guided hikers countless times before, but never a mother myth carrying living proof of her species. The Bigfoot kept close, scanning every shadow with protective instinct. Daniel admired her courage, wounded from captivity, weary from childbirth, yet fiercely focused on her child's survival. Behind them, a siren shattered the night. The lock alarm had been triggered. Lights exploded around the barn. Flashlights shot through windows. Radios crackled, and distant shouts tore across the compound. Beck barked orders. Secure perimeter. All staff to search teams. The subjects are loose. Daniel grabbed the Bigfoot's wrist gently. They'll come fast. We have to move. She nodded and loped after him on powerful legs. Even carrying her infant, Daniel pushed through dense undergrowth, breath burning in his lungs. Helicopter rotors began warming on the landing pad. They needed distance, fast. Daniel angled them downhill toward a river he knew well, a twisting current hidden by moss-covered banks and fallen logs. The forest swallowed them like a secret. But the research team was relentless. Dogs howled from the main trailhead, leaping into pursuit. Flashlights flickered between trees, cutting through darkness. The Bigfoot paused suddenly, snorting toward the wind. She sensed direction better than Daniel ever could. She pointed left, away from the dogs, and bounded forward with instinctive grace. Daniel followed blindly, trusting her wild intelligence. They reached the river just as a helicopter lifted above the trees, its searchlight swinging like a pale blade across the forest floor. The Bigfoot slid into the water without hesitation, cradling her baby high above the current. Daniel waded after her, body freezing, boots filling with icy water. The river muffled their scent and silenced their trail, carrying them downstream toward overhanging brush. The helicopter circled overhead, spotlight sweeping wildly. Daniel ducked beneath a fallen log, barely breathing. The Bigfoot pressed close, hiding her newborn beneath fur-lined arms. Minutes dragged like hours. Then the helicopter surged away, chasing motion somewhere else, likely a deer startled by their approach. The woods went quiet again. Daniel led them through a ravine where ferns grew tall and ancient cedar roots formed natural archways. The Bigfoot paused occasionally to nurse the newborn, humming softly, calm despite chaos. Daniel marveled at her resilience. "You're stronger than any creature I've ever known," he whispered. She touched his forehead gently, gratitude shimmering in her gaze. After nearly 2 hours of flight, they reached a hidden valley Daniel had discovered years earlier while mapping storm-damaged trails. Few humans ever traveled there. Rock walls shielded the valley from air surveillance, and the river fed a quiet meadow rich with berries, nuts, and fresh spring water. Daniel stopped on a mossy ledge. "This is far enough. They won't find you here." The Bigfoot sank to her knees, exhausted. She held the infant close and looked into Daniel's eyes with a depth that made him forget everything else. The danger, the betrayal, the cold river water still dripping from his clothes. She tapped her chest, then the baby's forehead. The gesture was unmistakable. Family. Daniel swallowed emotion he could barely contain. "I'll stay until morning. Once daylight comes, I'll lead the trackers in the wrong direction. You must keep moving into deeper wilderness." She nodded slowly, but then something extraordinary happened. From the far end of the valley came a soft chorus of low, melodic calls, echoing harmonies that seemed to rise from the forest floor itself. Shapes stepped from shadow, tall, furred figures, 5 or 6 adults, watching silently. Their eyes reflected starlight with ancient calm. A hidden tribe had been waiting, listening, keeping distance until they trusted Daniel's intentions. The Bigfoot mother let out a trembling sigh of relief. She handed her infant to one of the elders briefly, and they examined the child with reverent curiosity. Then she looked at Daniel once more. She reached out and pressed her massive hand against his chest, directly over his heart. Daniel covered her hand with his, feeling warmth and gratitude flow through him. "Safe," he whispered. She pointed to herself, to her tribe, to the darkness beyond the trees, and then to Daniel. The meaning was clear. We were here long before you. We will remain long after. We remember kindness. Daniel stepped back, letting them fade into the valley like mist returning to its origin. The mother disappeared last, humming a soft cradle song that drifted to the night long after she was gone. Daniel wiped tears from his face. He had just witnessed the rebirth of a legend, not captured, not dissected, but restored to a world that still had room for mystery. Then he turned toward the outer ridge, ready to mislead the hunters, knowing he would carry that secret for the rest of his life. And he smiled, because somewhere deeper than the forest, a newborn Sasquatch slept in safety, never knowing how close the world had come to losing it. Which city are you watching our video from? Please leave a comment. Please subscribe to the channel as well. Thank you.